I never thought my own daughter would treat me like I didn't exist, especially when I was lying there with a broken ankle. For days passed after my fall. Not a single visit. And when she finally showed up, she didn't ask how I was healing. She looked me in the eye and said something I'll never forget. Sell your home. That moment changed everything I thought I knew about family. And what I did next turned her world upside down 3 weeks later. If you're watching this right now, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful family stories like this. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I really want to know. Now let's get back to the story. I slipped on a rainy Thursday morning in March, and the very first thing I thought when I hit the ground wasn't about the pain. It was, Lord, I hope I turned the stove off. That probably tells you everything you need to know about me. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm 71 years old, widowed for 5 years now, and still stubborn enough to believe I can handle everything myself. I still carry my own grocery bags. Still climb up on little step stools even when my grandson keeps telling me, Grandma, Amazon literally delivers everything now. Still scrub my own porch railings every spring because I don't trust anybody else to do it right. And on that cold rainy Thursday in March, all that stubbornness finally caught up with me. The porch steps were slick. I remember my coffee mug slipping out of my hand. I remember hearing it shatter. And then I remember the sound my ankle made. Honey, I have lived a long life. I gave birth without epidurals. I survived gallbladder surgery in 1998. I once sat through 6 straight hours of my late husband Gerald trying to assemble IKEA furniture while refusing to read the instructions. But that pain was something else. I landed twisted sideways against the flower bed with rain soaking through my sweater and mud all over my hands. And the second thing I thought was, I need to call my daughter. I called my daughter, but she didn't answer. Her name is Vanessa. She lives exactly 14 minutes from my house. Yes, exactly. I timed it once during rush hour when Gerald was going through chemotherapy, because I like knowing how fast she could get to us in an emergency. 14 minutes. That felt close enough. Close enough that I never worried about getting old alone. Turns out distance and closeness ain't always the same thing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My husband Gerald used to say I was the kind of woman who held everything together with duct tape, casserole dishes, and pure spite. He wasn't wrong. I spent almost 34 years running a small accounting office in Columbus, Ohio. I handled payroll for half the local businesses in town. People trusted me with numbers because numbers don't lie. People do. That's one lesson age teaches you real quick. Vanessa is my only child. Well, my only child who lived. Before Vanessa, there was another little girl. Stillborn. Back in those days, people didn't really talk about grief. They just folded it up neat and tucked it away somewhere private. So that's what Gerald and I did. And then Vanessa came along screaming like she had bills to pay and opinions already formed. Bright blue eyes. Tiny little fists. The center of our whole world. Maybe we loved her too hard. Maybe we protected her too much. Or maybe parents are just guessing the whole time and praying they don't screw it up beyond repair. I don't know. What I do know is Vanessa grew up smart, sharp, beautiful, driven, the kind of girl teachers loved. She earned scholarships, graduated from a good university, married a man named Brent. Now Brent was one of those polished suburban men who always smelled expensive and somehow turned every conversation into a TED Talk about investments. You know the type. Firm handshake. White teeth. Talked about Napa wine like he personally discovered grapes. Gerald tolerated him. Barely. Vanessa and Brent had 2 children. My granddaughter Lily is 16 now. Quiet. Smart. Observant. That child notices everything. Then there's Mason. 13 years old. Basketball obsessed. Eats like a raccoon in a dumpster. I love those babies more than life itself. And for a long time I thought Vanessa had the perfect life. Big house. Luxury SUV. matching Christmas pajamas on Instagram. You know, the whole picture-perfect American family package. But over the last few years, little cracks started showing. Brent's business slowed down. There were whispers about debt. Vanessa started calling more often. First I loved it. A daughter calling her mama more? Shoot, every grandmother wants that. But eventually I noticed something. Almost every conversation drifted toward money. Not immediately. Oh no. Never immediately. First she'd ask about my health. Then the weather. Then church. Then eventually, Mom, can I ask you something? And there it was. A few $1,000s for school tuition. Another few thousand because Brent had a temporary cash flow issue. Money for a roof repair. Money for credit card debt. Money for Lily's SAT tutoring. Money for a Disney trip they absolutely did not need. I helped every time. Because that's what mothers do. Especially mothers who still remember their little girl with missing front teeth sleeping on their chest during thunderstorms. I never kept track. That felt cold. Transactional. Like sending invoices to your own child. Gerald would have kept track. That man labeled extension cords. But Gerald passed 5 years ago. And grief makes you soft in dangerous places. After he died, the house got quieter. Too quiet. So whenever Vanessa called, I answered. Even when I knew where the conversation was heading. Because loneliness will make you mistake being needed for being loved. That's the truth nobody tells older people. Then came that rainy Thursday in March. And I fell. The paramedics were sweet. Babies, really. Everybody under 40 looks like a middle schooler to me now. One young man kept calling me ma'am every 6 seconds like he was trying to earn merit badges. They told me I had a shattered ankle, 2 cracked ribs, and a torn ligament in my knee. Could have been worse, one of them said. That's what people always say when your world changes. Could have been worse. Honey, it was already bad enough. They took me to St. Anne's Medical Center. And during the ambulance ride, during the x-rays, during the paperwork, during every second sitting in that cold emergency room with fluorescent lights making everybody look half dead, I kept expecting Vanessa to walk through those doors. She didn't. Do you know who did? My neighbor Ruth. Ruth Hernandez. 76 years old. Retired elementary school teacher. Tiny woman. Huge personality. The kind of woman who says things like, well, bless your heart right before absolutely destroying somebody verbally. Ruth drove herself to the hospital in the rain. Brought me vending machine crackers and one of those awful little hospital coffees. And sat beside me for nearly 4 hours. 4 hours. Meanwhile, my own daughter sent a text. Heard about the accident. OMG, Mom. Busy day over here. I'll try to stop by tomorrow. Love you. I read that message at least 6 times. I kept thinking maybe there was another text coming. Maybe something got cut off. Maybe she meant she was already on the way. No. Tomorrow. Maybe. Ruth looked over at me quietly while I stared at my phone. And without saying a word, she opened the little pack of crackers and handed me one. That somehow hurt worse than the fall. Vanessa finally showed up on the 4th day. By then I'd already had surgery. 3 screws in my ankle. A brace on my knee. 2 ribs wrapped so tight it felt like somebody had shrink-wrapped my whole chest. And let me tell you something right now. Getting old in America is a weird experience. 1 minute you're arguing with customer service because they charged you twice for bananas. Next minute strangers are helping you use the bathroom while calling you sweetie. Humbling doesn't even begin to cover it. By day 4, the nurses on the orthopedic floor already knew my routine. Coffee with exactly 2 creamers. No grape jello. TV volume low. Door cracked open at night because I hated the feeling of being sealed inside that room like leftover meatloaf in Tupperware. There was one nurse in particular. Her name was Denise. Mid-50s maybe. Short silver braids. Reading glasses hanging around her neck. Walked fast. Talked faster. Denise had the energy of a woman who had survived bad marriages, rising grocery prices, and at least one adult son who still borrowed money. I trusted her immediately. She wasn't fake nice. You know what I mean? Not that customer service smile people glue onto their faces. Denise looked you straight in the eye. If you were being dramatic, she let you know. If you were hurting, she stayed. Simple as that. Every night around 8, she'd pull a chair near my bed for a minute or two before ending her shift. Not a long conversation. Just little check-ins. How you holding up today, Miss Eleanor? Pain level. You eating enough? And sometimes she'd just sit there quietly, while I stared out the hospital window pretending I wasn't thinking about my husband. Funny how grief sneaks up on you. 5 years gone and Gerald still showed up in little places. Coffee cups. Old songs. Empty chairs. Hospital rooms. Especially hospital rooms. Vanessa came in around 2 in the afternoon wearing beige boots that probably cost more than my first car. Perfect makeup. Designer coat. Phone in one hand. Little gift shop balloon in the other. The balloon said, "Get well soon." Like I had the flu instead of a leg held together by hardware from Home Depot. She kissed my forehead quick. Careful not to smudge lipstick. Then she looked around the room like she was checking into an Airbnb. "You look better than I expected," she said. I blinked at her. Better compared to what? She shifted awkwardly. "You know what I mean, Mom." "No," I said. "Actually, I don't." That threw her off a little. Vanessa wasn't used to resistance from me. I'd spent most of her life smoothing things over. Making excuses. Keeping the peace. Mothers do that too much sometimes. We call it love when really it's fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of losing closeness. Fear of realizing somebody only calls when they need something. She sat in the chair closest to the door. Not beside the bed. Closest to the exit. That detail stuck with me. People tell the truth with tiny things. She started talking about traffic. About Mason's basketball tournament. About Lily stressing over college applications. About Brent being under a lot of pressure right now. I just listened. Partly because I was tired. Partly because pain medication makes conversations feel like they're happening underwater. And partly because I was waiting for her to say something that sounded like, "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." It never came. Instead, she crossed her legs, adjusted her coat, and said, "So, how long are they keeping you here?" "A while," I said. "And then rehab probably." She nodded slowly. I could practically hear gears turning in her head. Then came that little throat clear she'd done since high school whenever she wanted something. I knew that sound better than my own ringtone. "Well," she said carefully, "Brent and I were thinking maybe this situation is kind of a wake-up call." I stared at her. What situation? The house. There it was. Not, "How are you feeling?" Not, "Are you scared?" Not, "Do you need anything?" The house. My house. The little blue two-story on Willow Creek Drive where Gerald and I spent 38 years building a life together. The house with pencil marks inside the pantry door measuring Vanessa's height growing up. The house where Lily took her first steps. The house where my husband died holding my hand. That house. "It's a lot for one person," Vanessa continued. "Especially after this accident." Accident. Interesting word choice. Made it sound like the problem was the house instead of the loneliness. She kept going. "There are some really nice active living communities near Brookside now." Active living communities. That's what rich people call old folks' homes now. Like slapping a fresh coat of paint on sadness. I looked at her carefully. "You've been thinking about this already." It wasn't a question. Her eyes flickered. "Mom, you already looked at places." "Well, Brent drove through one a couple weeks ago." Couple weeks ago. Before I fell. Before surgery. Before 4 days passed without my daughter showing up. They had already been discussing where to put me. like I was becoming a storage problem. I felt something cold move through my chest. Not anger exactly. Clarity. That's different. Anger is loud. Clarity is quiet. Quiet and sharp. I fell down the porch stairs 4 days ago, I said calmly. I know. You didn't come. Mom, that's not fair. No, I said softly. Actually, it is. For a second, neither of us spoke. Machines beeped down the hallway. Somebody laughed near the nurse's station. Life kept moving like nothing important was happening. But something important was happening. Something permanent. Vanessa looked frustrated now. Like somehow my feelings had become inconvenient for her schedule. I'm doing the best I can, she said. I nodded slowly. And maybe she was. That was the sad part. Maybe this really was the best she had left to give. We changed the subject after that. Or technically I changed it. I asked about the grandkids. Mason made varsity. Lily wanted to study architecture. Normal conversation. Safe conversation. The kind families use when they're standing near emotional landmines pretending not to see them. Vanessa stayed about 45 minutes total. Checked her phone 6 times. Yes, I counted. You get observant when people start treating you like background furniture. Then right before leaving she picked up her purse, her coat, and accidentally took the balloon with her. I watched her carry it right out the door. Didn't even notice. That almost made me laugh. Almost. About 20 minutes later Denise walked into the room holding my medication cup. One look at my face and she stopped. She said, "That bad, huh? My daughter thinks I should sell my house." Denise didn't react immediately. That told me she'd heard worse. Hospital nurses know every ugly truth about families. They see who visits, who calls, who disappears, who suddenly shows up asking about paperwork. She set the medicine cup down carefully. Then she pulled that chair beside my bed again. "She your only kid?" she asked. "Yeah." Denise nodded slowly. "My mama used to say people show you their heart during hard times. Some folks step up. Some folks start calculating. Calculating. That word hit me hard. Because suddenly I started replaying the last few years differently. The loans. The emergencies. The guilt. The way Vanessa always sounded extra loving right before asking for help. I felt stupid. And old. And embarrassed for not seeing it sooner. "I think I failed somewhere," I admitted quietly. Denise shook her head. "Nah. Bad math doesn't always come from bad parenting. That woman deserved a raise." I laughed a little at that. Then, completely against my will, I started crying. Not dramatic crying. Not movie crying. Just quiet tears sliding sideways into my hair while I stared at the ceiling tiles. Denise handed me a tissue. No speeches. No fake positivity. Just stayed there. And honestly, sometimes that's the difference between people who care and people who perform caring. One stays. The other schedules you between errands. That night after Vanessa left, I couldn't sleep. Hospital beds are terrible for thinking. Too much silence. Too much fluorescent light. Too much truth sitting still beside you. So around midnight, while the hallway lights glowed pale blue outside my room, I made a decision. Not out of revenge. Not anger. Just clarity. And the next morning, I called my attorney. My attorney's name is Walter Green. 72 years old. Suspenders. Polishes his own shoes. Still uses a flip phone on purpose because he says smartphones turned everybody into unpaid customer service representatives. Gerald loved him. The two of them used to sit on our back patio drinking cheap beer and complaining about property taxes like it was an Olympic sport. Walter handled our wills after Gerald got sick. After the funeral, he checked on me more than some family members did. That tells you something. I called him the morning after Vanessa's visit. I was sitting upright in that miserable hospital bed trying to drink weak coffee while a physical therapist named Connor cheerfully explained why standing up again was going to feel a little spicy. People under 40 really use words differently. Spicy. Sir, my ankle looked like somebody lost a bar fight with a lawnmower. Walter answered on the second ring. Eleanor, he said immediately. You all right? Funny thing about getting older. You start noticing who asks because they care. And who asks because they're gathering information. I'm alive, I said. Which lately feels expensive. That got a little laugh out of him. Then I told him everything. The fall. The surgery. Vanessa showing up 4 days late. The conversation about the house. The active living brochures Brent had apparently already been researching behind my back. Walter didn't interrupt once. Just listened. That's a rare quality now. Everybody wants to respond before you're even done talking. When I finished, he stayed quiet for a second. Then he asked, "What do you want to happen now?" Simple question. Hard answer. Because honestly, I didn't fully know yet. I just knew something inside me had shifted, like finally seeing a blurry picture come into focus. I don't want to spend the rest of my life feeling like a retirement account with a pulse, I said quietly. Walter exhaled slowly. Okay, he said. Then let's fix the structure. That man always talked like a lawyer building furniture. Fix the structure. Over the next few weeks, while I moved from the hospital into a rehab facility across town, Walter and I started having long conversations. Now let me tell you something about rehab centers. Those places will either break your spirit or sharpen it. There's no middle ground. Mine was called Maple Grove Recovery Center, which sounded cozy, like somewhere squirrels might knit scarves. In reality, it smelled faintly like disinfectant, canned soup and disappointment. Still, the staff tried hard, and some of them were genuinely wonderful. Physical therapy started every morning at 8 sharp. I hated every second of it. Every single second. A cheerful woman named Brianna kept making me practice standing exercises while saying things like, "You got this." "Ma'am, I did not got this." At one point she handed me resistance bands and said, "We're gonna wake those muscles up." Those muscles wanted legal representation. But slowly, very slowly, I got stronger. Walker first, then cane, then short distances without wobbling like a shopping cart with one bad wheel. And during all those long rehab days I had time. Too much time. Time to replay conversations. Time to remember patterns. Time to stop lying to myself. That's the dangerous thing about quiet. Eventually the truth gets loud. Vanessa visited twice during rehab. Twice in nearly 3 weeks. Both visits lasted under an hour. Both somehow drifted toward finances. Not directly. Never directly. That's not how people do it when they still want to think of themselves as good people. First she'd ask about my recovery. Then Brent's stress. Then rising costs. Then eventually, "You know, Mom, maintaining a house alone nowadays is really expensive." One afternoon she brought brochures. Actual brochures. Sunny smiling seniors holding wine glasses on golf carts. One community had a slogan that said, "Your next chapter starts here." Like aging was some adorable little adventure, instead of your knees slowly filing formal complaints against your existence. I flipped through the brochures quietly, then handed them back. "I'm not moving," I said. Vanessa sighed. Not angry. Annoyed. Like I was making things harder than necessary. That bothered me more than yelling would have. Meanwhile, my neighbor Ruth visited every Sunday. Every single Sunday. Sometimes she brought crossword puzzles. Sometimes gossip. Sometimes terrible casseroles. I ate them anyway. Because love served in a chipped casserole dish still counts. One Sunday she sat beside my bed knitting while I stared out the window. "You look different," she said finally. "How?" Less confused. That nearly knocked the wind out of me. Because she was right. I had been confused for years. confusing guilt with love, confusing dependence with closeness, confusing being useful with being valued. A lot of parents do that, especially mothers. We spend decades solving problems for everybody else. Then one day we wake up and realize nobody's asked how we're doing in years. Not really. Around week 3, Walter came to visit in person carrying a leather folder thick enough to scare politicians. We sat in a little private meeting room near the rehab garden, while an old man nearby yelled at birds for existing. Walter opened the folder carefully. "All right," he said. "Here's what I think." First came the will. The old version left almost everything to Vanessa. Made sense at the time. She was my daughter. My only child. Back then I still believed blood automatically guaranteed loyalty. Life teaches you otherwise eventually. Walter adjusted his glasses. "What matters to you now?" he asked. That question stayed with me. What mattered to me now? Not appearances. Not pretending. Not keeping peace at my own expense. I thought about Gerald. About the values we actually lived by. People who show up. People who stay. People who help without calculating returns. So I made decisions. Real decisions. A portion of my savings went to Lily and Mason's future education funds directly. Not through Vanessa or Brent. Directly. Another portion went to a local women's shelter Gerald and I used to quietly donate to every Christmas. Another part went toward a nursing scholarship program at St. Anne's Medical Center, specifically for older nurses returning to school. Denise immediately came to mind. Then I surprised even myself. I left something substantial to Ruth. Not enough to make headlines, but enough to matter. Enough to say, "I saw what you did for me." Walter nodded approvingly while taking notes. "And the house?" he asked. Now that took longer. Because the house wasn't just property. It was memory. Marriage. Birthdays. Grief. Christmas mornings. Burnt Thanksgiving turkeys. Late-night arguments. Dance music in the kitchen. Gerald singing off-key while fixing garbage disposals. That house held my whole adult life inside its walls. And suddenly I realized something. I didn't want it turned into Brent's next financial solution. That thought settled over me slowly and calmly. No rage. No drama. Just certainty. So I made another decision. The house would go into a protected trust. I could live there the rest of my life. But after I was gone, the property would transfer to a housing nonprofit that converted older homes into affordable residences for single mothers. Walter looked up at me carefully. "You sure?" I nodded. "Very." Because suddenly the idea brought me peace. Real peace. Not the fake kind people post quotes about online. The kind that lets your shoulders finally unclench. Then came the biggest decision of all. Power of attorney. Walter folded his hands. "Who do you trust making medical and financial decisions if something happens again?" That answer came faster than I expected. "You," I said. Walter blinked. "Eleanor." "And my doctor jointly," I added. "You both actually answer your phones." He laughed at that. But I meant it. Completely. Vanessa assumed she'd handle everything someday. She never said it outright. But you can feel assumptions like that. The casual ownership. The subtle positioning. The little comments about future plans. No more. I wasn't punishing her. That's important. People love turning older women into bitter villains anytime we set boundaries. But this wasn't bitterness. It was organization. Clear-eyed organization. That afternoon after Walter left, I sat outside in the rehab courtyard under a faded umbrella watching two pigeons fight over a French fry. And for the first time since my fall, I didn't feel helpless anymore. Sad? Sure. Disappointed? Absolutely. But not helpless. There's power in finally accepting reality instead of negotiating with it. That night Vanessa called. I could hear Brent talking loudly in the background. Something about refinancing. She sounded distracted, tired. Mom, she said carefully, we should really make some plans about the future. I looked out the rehab room window at the parking lot lights glowing in the dark. And for the first time in years, I didn't rush to make her comfortable. The future's already being handled, I said quietly. Silence. What does that mean? It means I've made my arrangements. Another silence. Longer this time. Then, you talked to Walter, didn't you? Smart girl. Always was. Yes. Her voice tightened slightly. You made decisions without discussing them with me? I almost laughed at that. 4 days. She left me sitting 4 days in a hospital bed before showing up. And now suddenly she wanted family discussions. Funny how that works. I'm discussing them now, I said calmly. Mom. No, Vanessa. Listen to me for a second. My voice stayed soft. That's the thing people misunderstand about older women. Soft doesn't mean weak. I spent years trying not to notice certain things because I wanted us to stay comfortable, I said. But comfortable and healthy aren't always the same thing. She didn't answer. So I continued. I love you. That hasn't changed. But from now on we're going to have a different kind of relationship. A more honest one. She sounded nervous now. What exactly does that mean? It means, I said quietly, you need to start solving your own life without planning around mine. And for once, I let the silence sit there. I came home in late April. The dogwoods were blooming. Rain finally stopped. And my house on Willow Creek Drive looked exactly the same. Funny how strange your own home feels after weeks away. Like it remembers you. But also notices you're moving a little slower now. Ruth helped me inside carrying grocery bags while I hobbled behind her with my cane. And yes, I hated the cane immediately. Hated the sound of it. Hated the symbolism of it. Hated the way people suddenly spoke louder around me like I'd also lost hearing along with mobility. But the truth was simple. Without it, I walked like a folding chair trying to survive an earthquake. So the cane stayed. Ruth set the groceries down and looked around. Well, she said, nothing exploded while you were gone. That's comforting, I replied. She pointed at me with a loaf of bread. And don't you start climbing stools again either. You've used up your dramatic injury quota. That woman ran on caffeine and sarcasm. Honestly, probably why we got along so well. The first few days home felt strange. Quiet. I'd forgotten how loud loneliness could be inside a house. The refrigerator humming. Floorboards creaking. TV talking to nobody. At rehab there was always noise. Movement. People. Back home? Just me and memory. Gerald was everywhere in that house. His reading glasses still sat in the kitchen junk drawer because I couldn't bring myself to move them. His flannel still hung behind the laundry room door. Some nights I'd turn my head to speak to him before remembering there was nobody there. Grief doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. Vanessa called more often after our last conversation. Not every day, but more. And I could tell something had shifted. She knew I had met my attorney. She just didn't know what I had done with it. That uncertainty sat between us in every call. She never asked directly. And I never volunteered anything. Not yet. Because silence sometimes speaks louder than explanations. One evening she called sounding exhausted. Real exhausted. Not polished tired. Not busy life tired. The kind of tired that sits in your bones. Mom, she said quietly, Brent lost another client. I stayed silent. Not cold. Just listening. He's freaking out, she added. Everything feels upside down right now. For a second I almost slipped back into old habits. Almost fixed it. Almost reached for solutions before the sentence even ended. That instinct lives deep in mothers. But I stopped myself. And instead I asked, and how are you doing? Long pause. Then she started crying. Not neat crying. Not controlled crying. The kind that comes when people stop performing strength. And sitting there at my kitchen table with my cane resting beside me, I realized something important. Vanessa wasn't heartless. She was overwhelmed. Self-centered sometimes. Yes. Avoidant? Absolutely. Too influenced by Brent? Without question. But not heartless. And that difference matters. Because once you stop seeing people clearly, you start making decisions based on anger instead of truth. I don't know how things got like this, she whispered. I looked around my kitchen, at the family photos, at Gerald's mug beside the sink, at a lifetime of choices sitting quietly in every corner. And before I could second-guess myself, I said, "Come over Sunday." "With the kids?" she asked. "With whoever wants real food," I said. That got a small laugh out of her. A real one. Sunday came warm and bright, and I insisted on cooking everything myself, even with the cane, even with Ruth telling me I was absolutely out of my mind for standing that long. But I needed it, because Vanessa knew I had met my attorney, and I knew she was watching me for clues in every word, every pause, every movement. Cooking was the only thing that still felt fully mine. So I cooked all morning. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, biscuits, the kind of meal that says, somebody still cares whether you ate today. By 4 o'clock the whole house smelled like butter and rosemary, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Then Brent arrived, and peace quietly stepped out the door. He walked in carrying an expensive bottle of wine nobody asked for, still polished, still performing like life was a boardroom presentation. But I noticed something new immediately. Stress. Real stress. Around the eyes. In the jaw. In the constant phone checking like it might give him answers. Vanessa came in behind him, and I noticed right away. She kept looking at me differently, carefully, because she knew I had met my attorney. She just didn't know exactly what I had decided. That gap mattered more than anything else in the room. Uncertainty changes people. Lily hugged me first. A real hug, long enough to mean something. Mason walked in and said, "Grandma, that king kinda makes you look like a boss." I laughed. Teenagers don't fake compliments when they don't have to. Dinner started off awkward. Families always do after truth enters the room. Brent talked too much. That nervous professional energy. Explaining things nobody asked him to explain. Then halfway through dinner he finally went there. "So," he said casually, "have you thought more about downsizing?" There it was. Vanessa immediately looked uncomfortable. Good. At least she still had instincts. I calmly set my fork down. "Nope." Brent gave a small forced chuckle. "Well, after everything that's happened, it's just practical." Practical. That word again. Funny how people use practical when they mean convenient for them. I looked at him, then at Vanessa, then said calmly, "The house situation is already settled." Silence. Brent blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said evenly, "I've already made legal arrangements." Vanessa went still, because she knew I had met the attorney. She just didn't know how far I had taken it. Brent leaned forward. "What kind of arrangements?" Now the lawyer in him surfaced. Not concern, not care, calculation. "I placed the property into a trust," I said. The room went silent. Even Mason stopped eating. Brent's expression tightened. Vanessa went pale. And I simply continued my dinner, because I had cooked it myself, and I was going to finish it in peace. Things didn't magically become perfect after that dinner. Anybody telling you families heal overnight is either lying or selling a podcast subscription. Real healing is awkward, slow, sometimes downright uncomfortable. It's built out of tiny choices repeated over and over until trust slowly stops flinching. Vanessa started coming by every Thursday evening. At first it almost felt scheduled, like physical therapy for our relationship. A little stiff, a little careful, too polite. She'd bring groceries I didn't ask for. I'd pretend not to notice she was trying. Then we'd eat dinner and talk about safe subjects. Weather, the kids, TV shows, recipes, anything except the giant emotional elephant sitting in the middle of the kitchen wearing orthopedic shoes. But gradually something changed. The performances faded. That's the best way I can describe it. Vanessa stopped talking to me like a client she was managing, and I stopped talking to her like I was afraid honesty might scare her away. Turns out real relationships breathe better once people quit auditioning. Meanwhile, Brent, well, that situation kept sliding downhill. 2 months after our dinner, Vanessa showed up alone carrying grocery store cupcakes and looking like she hadn't slept properly in weeks. I took one look at her face and said, "What happened?" She sat down slowly at the kitchen table. Brent moved into a condo downtown. Well then, there it was. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just sad. Apparently they'd been fighting constantly about money for over a year. Debt piling up. Refinancing. Credit cards. Maintaining appearances they could no longer afford. The usual American disaster package. Only now the mask had finally cracked all the way open. "He says I changed," Vanessa said quietly. "You did," I replied. That surprised her. "So this is my fault?" "No," I said. "But people get uncomfortable when you stop participating in unhealthy patterns." She stared at her coffee silently, then laughed a little through her exhaustion. "That sounds like something a therapist would say. I watch daytime television now. I absorb things." That got a real laugh out of her. Tired one, but real. Lily took the separation hard. Mason pretended he didn't care, which meant he cared deeply. Teenage boys think emotions are like raccoons. Ignore them long enough and maybe they'll leave. They never do. So little by little, my house became a landing place again. Not permanent. Not dependent. Just safe. Some Thursdays the kids came for dinner. Sometimes Vanessa came alone. Sometimes nobody came at all, and that was okay too. That part mattered. I stopped measuring love by frequency. Started measuring it by sincerity. Big difference. Physical therapy kept improving. I still use my cane, though mostly outside now. Turns out pride burns a lot more energy than acceptance. One afternoon Ruth caught me carrying laundry downstairs and yelled, "Girl, if you fall again, I am not helping your stubborn behind. Good to know our friendship has limits." "Oh, absolutely," she said. "I'm elderly too. I got boundaries." That woman deserved her own sitcom. Around midsummer, Denise invited me to a small retirement barbecue for hospital staff. I almost didn't go. Then I remembered something. Loneliness grows best in isolation. So I went. And honestly, I had a good time. Too much potato salad. Bad folding chairs. One nurse got tipsy and started oversharing about her third husband. Classic American summer evening. At one point Denise pulled me aside near the dessert table. "You look lighter," she said. I thought about that. And she was right. Not happier exactly. Life is in a Hallmark movie. But lighter. Because clarity removes weight. Even painful clarity. Especially painful clarity. You stop exhausting yourself trying to force reality into prettier shapes. A few weeks later, Vanessa asked if she could come by early before Thursday dinner. When she arrived, she looked nervous. The serious kind. Not fake nervous. Not "Mom, I scratched the car" nervous. Adult nervous. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, twisting her fingers together. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "All right then." That sentence almost never leads anywhere fun. I started seeing a counselor. Now that I didn't expect. I leaned back slowly. "How's it going?" She laughed weakly. "Apparently I have anxiety. Welcome to Earth." That made her smile. Then her eyes filled up again. "I think," she said carefully, "I think I spent years trying to build a life that looked successful because I was terrified of failing. I stayed quiet. When Dad got sick, and after he died," she continued, "you always seemed so strong." Oh, there it was. The misunderstanding underneath everything. Strong. People really need to stop confusing survival with invincibility. I wasn't strong, I said gently. I was devastated. She looked stunned. But you never acted like it. Because I thought being a good mother meant protecting everybody from my pain. I shook my head slowly. That was a mistake. And I meant that. One of the biggest mistakes of my life. I had spent decades presenting calm while quietly drowning, teaching my daughter that adulthood meant performing stability, no matter the emotional cost. No wonder she built her whole identity around appearances. Children learn from what you model, not what you preach. I think I learned to hide everything from you, Vanessa admitted softly. Especially when things got ugly. I nodded. And I learned to rescue you before you had to face consequences. We both sat there absorbing that truth. Not blaming. Just finally seeing it clearly. That's the thing nobody tells you about healing. Sometimes the biggest breakthrough is simply naming the pattern out loud. Outside, rain tapped softly against the kitchen windows. Funny. Almost exactly like the day I fell. Vanessa looked down at her hands. I really am sorry about the hospital, she whispered. This time I believed her completely. Not because the words changed. Because she had. I know, I said softly. And for the first time, the apology actually settled somewhere inside me. A month later, Lily got accepted into a summer architecture program in Chicago. When she told me, she cried. Vanessa cried. I cried. Even Mason looked emotional for like 3 seconds before pretending allergies attacked him indoors. That boy cracks me up. The night before Lily left for Chicago, the whole family came over for dinner. Even Brent. That surprised me. Things between him and Vanessa were still complicated. Separated but talking. Working through financial messes. Trying counseling. Honestly, I had no idea whether they'd stay married. And for once, I understood that wasn't my job to solve. That realization alone probably added 5 years back onto my lifespan. After dinner, Brent stayed behind while everybody else cleared dishes. He stood awkwardly near the kitchen doorway. I owe you an apology, he said finally. Well, hell must have experienced a light snowfall somewhere. I folded my arms quietly. You treated me like an asset, I said plainly. He swallowed hard. Yes. At least he didn't lie. I thought I was helping by being practical, he admitted. That's the problem with people who worship practicality, I replied. Eventually they start treating human beings like spreadsheets. That one landed. Good. He nodded slowly. You were right. Not gonna lie. That felt a little satisfying. Not revenge satisfying. Just honest satisfying. There's a difference. After everyone left that night, I sat alone on the back porch wrapped in Gerald's old flannel blanket. Summer air. Crickets chirping. Wind moving through the trees. And I thought about how strange life is. One bad fall on a rainy Thursday morning had cracked open everything people were avoiding. The finances. The marriage. The resentment. The loneliness. The pretending. Pain has a way of exposing structural problems. Guess that's true for families too. I still live in my house on Willow Creek Drive. Still cook too much food. Still yell at the news sometimes. Still miss Gerald every single day. The trust remains exactly as it is. The will to. Some people might judge that. That's okay. People who haven't lived your life always got opinions on what you should do with it. Vanessa comes every Thursday. Not because she wants something. Not because she's checking on inheritance possibilities. Just because she wants dinner with her mother. And honestly, that means more to me now than any apology ever could. A few months ago, Mason helped me clean the gutters. Well, technically he handed me tools while I supervised aggressively from a lawn chair. Growth comes in stages. I looked up at him wobbling around on that ladder and yelled, "Don't be a hero. We got professionals for this now." He laughed. "Grandma, relax." But I noticed he climbed down extra carefully after that. Smart boy. The older I get, the more I realize love isn't really measured by grand speeches or holiday photos or social media captions. It's measured in who sits beside your hospital bed, who answers the phone, who notices you're tired, who comes over when there's nothing to gain. That's it. That's the whole thing. People reveal themselves in the small inconvenient moments. And if you're lucky, really lucky, you get enough time to see clearly before life is over. I did. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but clearly. And these days, that feels like peace to me. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. People will always tell you they're busy, stressed, or trying their best. And sometimes that's true. But life doesn't measure words. It measures presence. Not the gifts. Not the plans. Not the promises for later. Just showing up when it's inconvenient. When nothing is in it for you. When nobody is watching. So don't build your peace on people who only appear when it's easy. And don't forget your own worth just because someone else keeps treating your time like it's optional. Pay attention to who shows up. Because that's where the truth is. Thanks for watching the video. I truly appreciate you spending your time here. If this story meant something to you, I hope you'll stick around for more. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.